Okay, here's my hot take. Handmade presents get a really bad rap. And yeah, sometimes it can feel kind of cheap or tacky or awkward to hand someone something held together with hot glue and hope that they like it. Especially when a lot of the ideas you see online don't actually feel like something someone would actually use or buy for themselves. I am on a mission to change that. Look, right now things are crazy, everything is super expensive, and I don't know about you, but for me, just thinking about the upcoming holiday season is starting to feel pretty daunting. I've been thinking a lot about creative, beautiful things that I could make the people in my life and actually feel proud to give them. The cool thing is that if you are any kind of artist or designer or maker or crafter or just general creative person, you have such a superpower when it comes to gift giving. I truly believe that we can make things that people would actually love to get. But I know sometimes just thinking about what exactly that could be can feel pretty exhausting. So I got you. I combed through my never-ending someday I'll get to it list and made an enormous Pinterest board full of really specific ideas for handmade gifts that don't suck, but actually feel doable and like something that you could do in an afternoon without questioning all of your life choices. So if that sounds fun to you, let's get into it. Real quick, if we're just meeting, I'm Janelle. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and this is my spot to talk about design and freelance life and how to have a creative career without losing your soul. So if that sounds like you, hit subscribe and let's be friends. At the same time as I was putting this together, I've also been working on my gift guide for creatives, which will be coming out next week, so stay tuned. As I was gathering a ton of links for that one, I realized that for this it would be simpler to just put everything into one big Pinterest board. So that way you can scroll through and get ideas, and I can send you to the original sources for tutorials and instructions as much as possible. And that way I could also pin multiple versions of the same thing so you could get different ideas of how you could attack a project. So instead of having a ton of links in this description, I'm gonna just put the link to the Pinterest board, and that way you can scroll through. I've broken it down into categories so you can zoom into the type of gift that you want to give and get there a little bit faster because there are a ton of things I've pinned. Okay, now on to the list. Firstly, let's talk consumables. I feel like this is a really underrated category of homemade gift. What I love about giving something edible is that it doesn't just feel like one more thing that they may or may not use. And it feels innately thoughtful to make something by hand in your kitchen and give it to someone. A lot of these ideas are super simple to make. You do not need to be a chef, and they're also really cost effective. And what I love about them is that you can make a lot of things in big batches, and then you have gifts to give to a lot of people in your life. Especially if you don't know someone really well, you can bank that most people will probably like all of these things, which is kind of great. This can really include anything that you can bottle or jar or can or be able to give without refrigeration, right? Probably the most classic example is to give homemade vanilla. It's one of those things that seems really special and expensive, but is actually dirt simple. I actually did this for all my Christmas presents last year, and it took about 10 minutes active to put together, and then I had to set it aside for a year. So it's not really going to help you right now, but if you do this in January, next year, you're going to feel like the gift-giving boss. But there are also a lot of infused things that only take a couple of days or hours to put together, like infused sugars or salts or oils. All of these kinds of things that are really simple and really cheap to make, but they feel really special. If you know someone's really into cocktails, you could make them interesting shrubs or bitters. I mean, what an interesting gift that is. And there's just something really special about saying, here, I made you this jam or this chutney or this whatever that's part of my culture or my family background or the thing that my mom made every year for Christmas. I mean, you can put a spice blend together in 5 minutes, but it feels like a really thoughtful present. I don't think you should sleep on this. And I'm biased as a designer, but I think a lot of this comes down to packaging. You know, something can feel a little homemade and kind of thrown together, but with a label and a really pretty bow, suddenly this feels like something that you bought at Williams-Sonoma, and it's like really expensive. A few extra credit ideas in this category would be making your own chocolate bars, which is as simple as spreading out chocolate and adding mix-ins. And if you really want to be impressive, I found a lot of ideas of people making their own tea blends and then putting them into homemade little satchels. So you're actually giving someone tea bags that you made in-house. I mean, that's pretty epic. The next giant category are things for the home. I don't think we always think about making practical things, but I love the idea of giving gifts that you know someone will actually use on a regular basis. It's actually pretty easy to make upgraded, beautiful versions of things that someone would need anyway. And I think there's something really thoughtful about making something that you know will actually get used and incorporated into someone's regular life. It means that you know them well enough to know the kinds of things that they have around and make them something lovely that they wouldn't have necessarily thought for themselves. Could be really cool. There are a lot of decorative ideas, obviously, like this trend lately where people get old records and then hand paint on them, so you end up with an art piece that somehow speaks to the record. I think that's really pretty. But then there's just a lot of small things that could exist in your home. Obviously, you could make a candle and a candle holder, but have you ever thought about making a matchstick holder? It's the kind of thing that you need to have around, and they're usually really ugly. And if you've ever tried to buy a beautiful one in Anthropologie, you know they can be stupidly expensive. It's not something I think a lot of people would think about for themselves, but it's a really pretty upgrade that they would actually use. Like I said, I would. The real hero of this category is definitely the wonder that is air dry clay. You could do so many things with a block of air dry clay, and a lot of this stuff is really simple. You could upgrade things on their desk, like the little holder that they keep Post-it notes in, or a candle holder, or a trinket dish, or a little iPhone stand that they keep on their desk. There are so many things you could do with like an hour and a block of air dry clay. Bookends, hooks, door stoppers, napkin holders, clocks. I mean, really the sky's the limit here. You don't need a fancy kiln. It's extremely easy to work with, it's cheap, and with a little bit of finesse, you can make something that's actually really beautiful and kind of sophisticated. And I love the idea of making something really practical, like a little holder where they keep their remotes, or a hook for their keys that go to the door. Things that show that you're seeing how they actually live. But beyond air dry clay, you can do a lot of things with fabric, like sewing a holder for firewood that they would carry in from outside, or using cement for something that feels really durable. And then there's good old-fashioned, basic level woodworking. I love this present idea where you make a little key holder for them to keep track of their keys by the door. It's really practical. It's something they would actually use. And I think that putting this together would be as simple as a few little dowels and some blocks. There are a lot of variations of this, and I don't know a lot of people that wouldn't like something like this. If your person loves to cook, think about things that would make their kitchen experience a little bit more joyful. There are a lot of utilitarian things that we exist with in our kitchens that are kind of ugly, or at least basic, and could be easily upgraded to a handmade version, like a paper towel holder, or a spoon rest, or the little sponge dish that you keep by your sink. All of these things could be upgraded with a little bit of thought and a block of air dry clay. If your person is into coffee, I love this idea of making a little holder for your coffee filters. I always keep my filters in the box that they came in my cupboard, and it's really ugly. I am going to make one of these for myself just because it would bring me joy. That's a really nice present. One of these little holders with a bag of fresh coffee would make a great present for any caffeine addict in your life. For the clay things, I tried to stay away from things that would be in contact with a lot of food, but you can actually seal, waterproof, and food-safe air dry clay if you want to. So there are some ideas in that general area. Thinking beyond clay, I love the idea of buying some cheap, basic wooden implements like wooden spoons or cutting boards, and then using a wood burner tool to make really beautiful patterns or drawings on them. Not everything has to be made from scratch to feel special and thoughtful. You could engrave their initials or a family monogram, or draw something that is special to them, like their favorite flower or whatever. A wood burning tool is a pretty cheap thing to add to your art arsenal, and it's actually really handy to be able to do some cool stuff with. An extra credit idea in this category is if you have someone who loves to bake, go to their house and steal their KitchenAid mixer, and then make something custom on it. This can be really simple or geometric. It could be hand painted and beautiful. You could use paint markers or actually go in with acrylics. And it's really easy to seal it and make it waterproof and easy to clean afterwards. There are a ton of tutorials online. This is not actually a complicated process, but I think it's something really thoughtful that no one would see coming. In the same vein, I love giving gifts to people who like to host or have people over. There are so many little things that make having someone over or having a big dinner party easier, and they can be really expensive and kind of build up. So anything that you can give that says, hey, I see that you love to open your home to people, and I want to help make that process more beautiful and easier for you. It's a really thoughtful present. Obviously, there is a whole world of textiles here. Napkins and table runners and tablecloths make really beautiful presents, and they can be really expensive to buy for yourself. And you don't even have to open a sewing machine if you don't want to. I've pinned a lot of no-sew ideas here. And you can even buy blank ones and dye them yourself or paint something on it. It doesn't have to be fully handmade for it to still be touched by you and made special. There's also a lot of hosting adjacent little trinkets that are really nice to have that you can make in clay or cement really easily for someone. Things like napkin rings or coasters, little placeholders that you can use to put someone's name around a table or on a buffet to say what the food is. I love these little markers that show different kinds of cheeses to put on a cheese board, or make little dishes or trivets or trays, things for people to put out when they have people over. This is a pretty random idea, but if you know someone has a bar that they like to keep out, what if you made them custom bottle stoppers for all of their bottles of alcohol? It's pretty extra and probably not something people would think to do for themselves, but it's kind of cool. And it's as simple as buying some corks and then adding something on top of it. You could really customize this for the person and make it really full of their personality or fit their vibe or aesthetic. This could be minimal or wacky or kind of whatever. I kind of like it. Next, there is a whole world of beauty products and things for self-care that you can make yourself. It's actually kind of wild how incredibly easy and very cheap it is to make a lot of beauty products. And by giving someone something handmade, you can customize the scent for them and also know that it's natural and that it's something that doesn't have a ton of stuff in it. This might seem overwhelming or technical, but you've got to look at these tutorials. A lot of these are really easy to make. First off, there's the whole world of homemade soap, which is an entire rabbit hole that you can get down as a crafter. But if you don't want to get into a lot of the technical soap making, there's just basic melt and pour, which is kind of combining pre-made ingredients, but making them really special and custom. The end result can feel really expensive and professional, even though it was really easy to put together. I pinned some of my favorite ones that I've had on my to-make list for a long time, but there's a ton of other ideas out there if you want to go down this little trail. Beyond that, the whole world of bath bombs and shower steamers and scrubs is something that you can really easily make. It does not take a lot of ingredients, they're really cheap, and you can batch produce these things and make a lot of presents that you can give to a bunch of people. This is the kind of stuff that I don't think about making for myself, but if someone gave it to me, I would find it really awesome. What I've pinned here is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many creative ideas here. In a similar vein, it's hard to explain this category, but there's a whole bunch of DIYs that have gotten very popular on TikTok lately, and I wanted to put a lot of these ideas together into one place because there are some really clever ideas that any girl in your life would probably love to have. DIY bag charms and journal charms and keychains are having a whole moment right now, and this might wildly not appeal to you, but for the certain kind of person, this would make the perfect present. They're really easy to make, and you could customize them in a million different directions. There's also a lot of really easy things that you can make if someone loves jewelry or makeup or just have a vanity space. Little trinket dishes and ring holders and jewelry hangers. Little vessels to put your Q-tips and cotton pads on. These are little things, but if you're looking for something for a teen in your life, I guarantee these would be a hit. If you like to sew, eye masks or hair scrunchies or glasses holders or reusable makeup wipes are all really nice presents in this general area and would take a second on a sewing machine. The extra credit gift in this category is the TikTok trend of taking a hairbrush and hand painting something custom to the person. A monogram or an initial or a flower or something that feels special to them can make this actually a really beautiful present, even if you're just buying a brush. And if you use the wood burner I told you about, you could actually engrave it into the wood, which would just take it up a notch. It's kind of a nice present. If you have another creative person in your life, there are so many upgrades to the making process that can be really thoughtful presents, things that you wouldn't think to make for yourself. The obvious answer here are any things that beautify the actual tools we use to make. You can make beautiful handmade palettes and brush holders and water cups for painting, and you don't have to fire them in the kiln. You can make those waterproof with air dry clay. There are so many creative ideas for this on the internet. I just picked a few to get you going, but the sky is the limit. You can make something really elegant and organic, or something really whimsical and wacky, depending on who your artist is and what kind of vibe they have. If your creative is into knitting or crochet, make them one of these bowls that holds the yarn for you and makes it easier to not get tangled. There are so many ideas here that can be in really different styles, but it's a pretty simple build, and that's something really tangible that I guarantee they would like. If your creative is into sewing, there are so many ways to level up their sewing experience and make it more beautiful. Cool pattern weights or needle holders, or a case for their special sewing scissors so they don't get mixed up with the peasant scissors. And then there's an entire world of wacky pincushions that you can make to fit any aesthetic. You could really have a lot of fun here and make something that they would actually use. If your person loves to travel, make them something practical that would make their trip a little bit easier. A case for their Kindle or iPad or laptop. Every person who travels needs more little containers and rolls and pouches for cords and all of the random little stuff that you need to stick in a day bag. Make them a travel jewelry case or a dock kit, or a little pouch full of stuff to make the plane more comfortable. If they're an artist, make them a little roll of all of their art supplies to make it easier to create while they're traveling. The other present that I think is really special for people who love to travel is something to help them remember the places they've been or where they want to go. There's some really cool ideas for quilted or felted maps so that you can pin where you want to go, or stitch the route of where you've been on a trip. This idea from the Sorry Girls is something that has stayed in my brain. She made a quilted map of North America and then used it to put all of the patches that she collected from national parks that she traveled to. I mean, that's a really cool next level present for someone who has a really specific type of travel they like to do. I think that custom games are a completely overlooked category of present. This might feel random, but hear me out. Even if you have the most casual game fan, a handmade version of something playable is a really cool decor item that could just stay out. It's not something that you think for yourself, but it can be really elevated and beautiful, and you can really tailor it to the person. If your person likes to play chess, there are endless possibilities of a custom chessboard that would make the coolest present. But beyond that, really simple games like dominoes or Chinese checkers or mancala can make really beautiful objects, and they're pretty easy to make. Obviously, air dry clay comes in clutch here again, but you can also make some really cool things with cement or resin. Look at these resin dominoes. There are so many cool ideas here, and all you have to do is buy the mold once to make a lot of different versions of this. There's been this cute trend lately of making really aesthetic tic-tac-toe boards that look like different foods, like waffles or pizza or matcha lattes. And it'd be really easy to make, but it's a really cute present if you know the right person. I pinned a couple, but there's a ton of ideas here. You also don't have to start from scratch here. You could buy something like a basic cornhole board and then paint something custom on it. A lot of these games come with basic wooden boards or cloth bags that you can paint something unique on. Or take something like a Jenga set and do something custom on it. It's a really cool present. And if you are lucky enough to have a nerd in your life, there are some specific things here that could make a really cool present. You can make a carrying case and a rolling tray for their dice if they play D&D. Or if they play a lot of card games or poker, make a roll for their decks and their notepad to keep scores that they could take with them to games. The extra credit gift here is if your person is a video gamer, make them an actual stand for their controllers and their headphones. This is not something that they will probably have for themselves, but it's actually really thoughtful and something that they would actually use, which can be really hard to find in the world of gift giving. Next, if you have any kids in your life, you probably already know that toys can be wildly expensive. And if you're not around a child all of the time, it's hard to know exactly what they're into at any given time. There are so many cool handmade toys and games that you can make for a kid that will blow their mind. And a lot of these things are much easier than you would think to make. This can really span the skill gamut from the wild world of cardboard, where you can make things like stitching toys or counting things, or these little cardboard hands for someone who's obsessed with nail polish so they can make little manicures. I mean, how cute is that? That takes what? 10 minutes and some trash, and that's a really cool present. I love these games to match colors using paint chips from the hardware store. My nieces would love this, and this is almost free to make. A lot of these things you can buy basic versions of and then paint or embellish to make them feel more unique and elevated. And then there is the wild world of felt toys. A lot of these things are really easy to make, and there's so many different versions of this. You can make something that feels really custom and special, and not something that they could buy in a store. I think it would be a really cool present. One year when my niece was a toddler, I bought really cheap wooden blocks and then hand-painted a puzzle for her to play with. It was a really big hit, and it was a lot of fun to make. Obviously, handmade toys can really span the skill level gamut, and the extra credit version here is making a dollhouse. This does not have to be as terrifying as it seems. IKEA, for example, has a really cheap, unfinished dollhouse that you can buy, and there is a whole corner of the internet dedicated to people just pimping this dollhouse out. You can make some really cool stuff that will blow someone's mind. A few years ago before Christmas, I found a giant wooden dollhouse at a Goodwill for $5, and I spent about a month completely making it over for my nieces. It was honestly more for me than for them. I had a ton of fun making custom wallpapers and little furniture and tapestries that went on the walls. It was one of my favorite random projects to make, and they still play with it to this day. Sometimes using an excuse of being a little bit extra in present making can mean you get to have a really fun creative project that you wouldn't otherwise get to do. So take this as your sign. Make a dollhouse. I wanted to stay away from a lot of clothes and knitwear suggestions because if you are someone who sews or knits or crochets, you already know that this is something you can give. But I think there's a few ideas of pretty easy things that you can make that would make good presents for a lot of people that you might not be thinking of. Last year, for example, I made a utility apron for my mother-in-law who loves to garden. I put it together with a few little things, and I think it made a nice present. If your person loves to cook or garden or craft, make them an apron. Likewise, things like slippers or robes are really nice presents for a lot of different people, and they're not hard to make. You might want to think about it. And then there are gifts for all of us pet parents. If someone in your life has a pet, they would probably love some really cute pet accessories. And it will shock you how easy some of these things are to make. Turns out things like leashes and collars are just bits of leather or cord or canvas, and they're actually pretty easy to make and feel really polished and professional. You can make really simple things like a bow tie or a bandana or a little pouch to keep the poop bags in that are really thoughtful. A little leather disc and some stamps, and you have a dog tag. A little pom-pom and a stick, and you have a cat toy. There's some great ideas here that would take you no time at all to make. And if you want to really blow their socks off, make them custom feeding bowls. This doesn't have to be difficult, and you don't have to worry about being the surface that they actually eat out of. If you take a basic aluminum pet bowl, you can build a stand for it out of wood, or a base out of clay or cement, and end up with something really custom. This is not something I think people would think of, but it would be a really cool present for anyone who has pets. Finally, if you are any kind of a creative person looking for a good present that feels really unique and special to a person, make them some artwork. This does not have to be complicated, and you can really tailor this to different styles and mediums and tastes. The trick is to not just make work that you like, but to make artwork that is specific for the person. So it feels like you made them something custom, because you did. I could pin things for this forever, but I wanted to give some ideas of types of things that you could make someone to get your wheel spinning. So I'm not going to focus on different styles or mediums as much as the type of subject that you could make art out of. Say your person loves music or movies. They have a band that they love, or a song that you guys share together, or a movie franchise that they love and they never stop quoting. Make them artwork inspired by that thing. You can use song lyrics or an image from a movie to make something really specific. If you're a graphic designer, maybe you make them a set of posters inspired by all of their favorite movies that they can hang in their TV room. That's a really cool present. And this general idea can span really any interest or hobby. You can make abstracted or elevated references to just about any interest. If they're really into racing, make them some cool racing graphics that they can hang in their man cave. If they love cocktails, make them some cocktail-inspired art that they can hang in their bar. Maybe they're into a sport like golf or tennis, or they love houseplants or gardening. Any interest can really be tailored into artwork that would be unique to the person. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are so many good ideas that you can use as references. You're not selling these things, you're making something specific for a person. So it's okay to take inspiration from something you see online and make it your own. I especially love the idea of making something designed to go in a specific place. So if they love to cook, maybe you make them some artwork for their kitchen and you frame it so it's really easy for them to hang. If they have a special city that they love, or they have a hometown that they don't get to visit a lot, you could make them artwork inspired by that place. This could obviously be a scene or a painting from that place, but you could also make it a little more abstracted. You could take objects or icons that reference that city and make it something that feels really specific. I love this idea where someone has taken a color palette that reminds them of a city and then given each color a specific name that references something from that place. This is a really cool idea, and it could look a lot of different ways. Or make them a map. This could be really illustrated and animated. It could reference a trip that you guys have been on, or it could be really graphic. You could do a series of maps of each of the places that they've lived. That would make a cool present. There's so many ways that you could make something related to places that are meaningful to someone. If they have a country that's important to their family history, you could make them artwork that's evocative of that place, or that references the food of that place. Maybe there's a dish that's really special to their country of origin, or there's a family recipe that they really love. You could actually illustrate out the recipe. You could show all of the ingredients going into a pot, or actually write out what that recipe is. There's so many ways you could do this, but it would be a really unique and customized present. Or maybe they actually have a recipe card that was handed down from someone. You could take that and make that into artwork. How special is that? Likewise, do a portrait of a house. You could do the place where they live now, or where they grew up. This does not have to be technically awesome. The whole point is that it's custom and specific to them. Even a really simple line drawing or doodle feels really special if it's a place that you love. Maybe they have a family crest. You could illustrate that or draw it. Or you could invent a family crest for them of the things that you think represent them as a family. How cool is that? If you really want to go the extra mile, make a family portrait. This does not have to be complicated, and there's a lot of different ways you could execute it. You could make silhouettes of people by tracing their photo. You could make it really cartoony or graphic, or make it really detailed. There's a lot of good tutorials online that make this doable, and this is a blow your socks off gift for the right mother or grandparent or etc. And for the proud pet parents among us, make them a portrait of their pet. This could be really simple and doodly or really intricate and serious, but any pet lover would love this gift, I promise. The point is that if you are any kind of a creative person, you can aim your skill set and probably all of the supplies that you've been hoarding to make really thoughtful, specific, meaningful presents for not a lot of money in ways that come across feeling really cool. A lot of these ideas are really easy and affordable and very doable, and I think you can end up making something that feels really polished and professional. if you want to. It comes down to knowing your person and choosing objects that they would actually want to have in their life. I hope this makes the holidays feel slightly less daunting, and if there are any ideas that I've missed, let me know because I'll add them to the board. I'm dropping my 2025 gift guide for creatives next week, but you should watch last year's video in the meantime because I've got a ton of great ideas to tide you over. See you there!